My wife has cheated off and on for the past number of years. Is it possible to trust her again, or better yet, find concrete proof? I could really use some guidance because I've been feeling stuck for a long time now, 8 years to be exact. Yes, you heard that right, a whole 8 years. Before we dive into this, please be understanding and refrain from any negative comments. I truly value and welcome any advice you might have. Let me give you a bit of background. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I've been married to my wife, who's 35, for nearly 13 years. We met back in college and have been inseparable ever since, totaling 16 wonderful years together. However, about 8 years ago, I found out she was having an emotional affair with a co-worker. Thankfully, it didn't escalate physically, but the emotional betrayal was hard to digest. We have 2 amazing children, aged 10 and 11, who mean the world to me. They bring so much joy to our lives. But here's where things get tough. I've been struggling with trust issues ever since that discovery. It's exhausting always second-guessing her actions and words, wondering what's true and what's not. It feels like my trust bucket has been overflowing for quite some time now, and I'm just tired of it all. Let me share some background about my situation, being as open and honest as possible without oversharing. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not perfect, and I'm willing to acknowledge my shortcomings. Thanks for bearing with me as I lay it all out. We met during our college years, and it didn't take long for love to blossom between us. Within just the first month, I had this strong feeling that she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. We were completely smitten with each other, and our love story took off like a whirlwind romance. After graduating from college, we took the big step of buying our first home together, marking a new chapter in our lives. Before long, we received the exciting news that we were expecting a baby. With a baby on the way and our love stronger than ever, we decided to tie the knot and make our commitment official through marriage. During my college years, I struggled with a serious drug and alcohol problem that consumed me for a good 6 years. Sadly, when our first child was born, I was in the delivery room but not fully present. I was high. The same thing happened when our second child was born. My addiction had taken such a hold on me that it led me down a path of self-destruction, eroding the trust my wife had in me. It took me until a year after our second child was born to finally face my demons and get clean. My addiction put a huge strain on our marriage, and I fully recognize my fault in that. Just 3 months into my sobriety, I discovered that my wife was having an affair with a co-worker who was significantly older than her, over 12 years her senior to be exact. I confronted my wife about it, and we had some tough conversations. Despite the hurt and betrayal, we both wanted to fight for our marriage and make things right. She said that my addiction had driven her away, and that she really wanted to be with me. Looking back, I've learned a lot about how cheaters often rationalize their actions. So we committed ourselves to working on our relationship and rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. Fast forward about 6 months, and I find out she's still in contact with this guy. I'm furious, and we get into a heated argument. I threaten to walk away from our marriage, and she pleads with me, promising to make things right. Foolishly, I give her the benefit of the doubt once more and believe her words. She insists that nothing has happened between them, other than just talking. If you can't catch my sarcasm here, I might need to find a sarcasm button to add later on. We decide to give counseling a try, hoping it would help us both individually and as a couple. To be honest, I didn't enjoy counseling much because it often felt like I was being painted as the villain. The narrative seemed to be that her cheating was somehow my fault, and we struggled to understand why she continued talking to him despite everything. This pattern of behavior dragged on for the next few years, further eroding the trust I had in her. During this time, I found myself just going through the motions, waiting and watching to see if things would truly change. The broken trust and ongoing issues made me start to withdraw emotionally as I began to bide my time, hoping for a resolution. I can already hear some people asking, "Why didn't you just get a divorce?" It's a valid question, and I've definitely thought about it. The thing is, my wife is extremely emotional. She wears her heart on her sleeve. When she's angry or upset, you'll know it. If something offends her, she won't hesitate to let you hear about it. Sometimes I playfully call her a Karen, but to be honest, it's not really a joke. She can lose her temper pretty quickly. Over the years, she has matured and improved in handling her emotions, but she still has a tendency to get worked up easily. Now throw in our 2 young, impressionable kids into the mix, and I worry about whether she would always prioritize their best interests. The first time divorce seriously crossed my mind, I was filled with fear, not about finances like child support or alimony, but about the well-being of my children. So, as cliché as it might sound, I stayed in the marriage for the sake of our kids. Plus, financially, we were in a tough spot with a lot of debt. Splitting up would have meant dividing our debts rather than any assets. That's another reason I chose to stick it out. Also, being newly sober and emotionally fragile at the time played a part in my decision to stay and try to make things work. In 2019, my wife decided she wanted to further her education to pursue better job opportunities. She enrolled in school part-time while juggling a full-time job. This meant that I took on the role of housekeeper and primary caregiver for our children. She was so swamped with work and school that whenever she wasn't working, she was hitting the books. That year was incredibly tough on me. I was working full-time, managing the household, and taking care of our kids pretty much on my own. After a year of juggling all these responsibilities, she graduated and landed a job that paid really well. Just when things seemed to be looking up, I discovered she was in contact with the other person yet again. It felt like the last straw for me. This wasn't the first time, but it felt like one betrayal too many. I told her I was done, that our marriage was over. She promised to end it with him for good this time. I felt it was only fair to let our families know what was going on, so I shared the truth with them. She was upset about it, but I didn't care anymore. At this point, our children were still quite young, and the thought of sharing custody with her terrified me. My kids mean everything to me. They're the reason I keep going every day. So I decided to take a break and spent a few days away from home. When I returned after 3 days, the atmosphere in the house was heavy with sadness. My kids looked so downcast and melancholy, it broke my heart. Apparently, during my absence, my wife had been on edge, yelling and angry most of the time. Seeing my children so affected by the tension at home made those days away even more difficult to bear. So, like a fool, I decided to give our marriage another shot and stayed. Around the same time, the housing market was booming, and I convinced my wife that selling our house could help us clear our debts and make a good profit. She agreed, and we ended up with a decent amount of money in the bank. We found a new place to rent and moved in by the end of 2020. I have to admit, the change of scenery and her switching jobs seemed to breathe new life into our relationship. It felt like we were hitting the reset button and getting a fresh start. For a while, things were really looking up. Then, life threw me a curveball. I lost my job in sales, which had been paying pretty well. That hit me hard, and I sank into a deep depression. Despite the challenges, my wife stood by me and supported me through those tough months. It was strange, almost like I was seeing glimpses of the woman I fell in love with all those years ago. Initially, I had planned to split our money, share custody of the kids, and part ways for good. But as things started to improve between us, I found myself curious to see where this new chapter would lead. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, leaving the past behind and building something new together. Inspired by this newfound optimism, I even decided to go back to school to finish the degree I had started ages ago. To top it off, I already have a job lined up for when I graduate. It seems like things are finally falling into place, and I'm hopeful for what the future holds for our family. Can anyone else see where this is headed? If you can, hats off to you. Just last week, I was using my wife's computer when I noticed her Facebook tab was open. Out of curiosity, I clicked on it, and guess what? She had searched for that guy on Facebook and was actually friends with him. Talk about a shocker. I confronted her about it, and she claimed she had no idea how she became friends with him. She admitted to looking him up on Facebook, but said it was because she saw he had posted an interesting article. I mean, how would she even see his posts if they weren't friends on Facebook, right? She tried to explain herself, but at that point I just thought, why even bother? It felt like history repeating itself, and all those old feelings of anger, resentment, and betrayal came flooding back. We had seemed to be in a good place, moving forward and rebuilding our relationship. But now I find myself doubting everything all over again. She insists that their relationship was only emotional and that nothing physical ever happened between them. I want to believe her, but deep down I have my doubts, and without solid proof, it's hard to know what to believe. We had been making progress, but now I'm left questioning everything once more, wondering if we'll ever truly move past this. So I'm at a point where I feel the need to get to the bottom of this and find concrete evidence one way or another. How does one go about proving or disproving these claims? I've been seriously considering suggesting a polygraph test for her. A few years back, right before we sold our house, I had thought about insisting she take one. However, at that time, part of me was hesitant to uncover the truth, while another part just wanted to focus on fixing our relationship and moving forward. Now, if I'm going to continue sticking it out for the sake of our kids, I feel like I need to know the whole truth. I want to be certain about her claims and put any lingering doubts to rest. So I'm turning to you all for advice. Does anyone have any suggestions on how I can either prove or disprove what she's saying? I'm open to any ideas or strategies that could help me get to the bottom of this and make an informed decision about our future together. As I sit down to write this, I know I might face some criticism for not walking away the first or even the fifth time I caught her talking to him. Every time I discovered their conversations, there was never any mention of them meeting up or engaging in anything physical. They talked about wanting to, but there was never any solid proof that they actually followed through. Having concrete evidence like from a polygraph test would be incredibly helpful. It's not just about proving to myself, but also about having something tangible to show my kids when they're older. The thought of having to share custody with her terrifies me, but what scares me even more is the possibility of her using the kids as leverage or even weaponizing them against me. I'm really hoping to get some advice or suggestions from you all. If anyone has been through something similar or has any insights on how to approach this situation, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you all in advance for your help and support.